Good afternoon, everyone. I am Neff, and going to talk about ethics and qualitative research. Now, before this part, Arisha has eloquently discussed about the value of reflexivity and the importance of reflecting on and contemplating about social positioning and the value of these reflexive exercises in our research endeavor. Now, my goal this afternoon is to continue that discourse by focusing on ethics and qualitative research. To start with our conversation regarding this um, topic, I want us to spend some moment in thinking about the words, images, sensations, or imageries that come to our mind when we hear the word ethics. So I encourage you to just pick up your pen and a piece of paper and just write down or scribble or draw anything that comes to your mind when you hear the word ethics. And I'll give you a minute to do this exercise. Right. So I suppose that you have written some words or phrases on your piece of paper or have drawn something that pops up in your mind when you hear the word ethics. And I did the same exercise prior to this presentation and probably a few times in the past thinking about this particular concept. And when I was looking at the internet and was trying to look for a mind map of what the word ethics evoke in people, I found this image here. Some of the words that we usually attribute to ethics are principles. So these are you know things that guide us in doing certain things in implementing certain tasks, not only in the area of research, but also in our lives and in our work. It is also somehow related to the concept of trust, because when we do things ethically, I suppose we become more reliable. As you can see, the term reliability comes in, and when we are reliable, then people trust in what we do, and we also trust in ourselves that we are doing things in a certain way that is acceptable and proper. It also has something to do with integrity, like doing things in the right way as we are supposed to do them, even when no one is watching us. And this is very much applicable in research, most especially since we, as the instrument of the research process, especially in when we are approaching it qualitatively, much of the things that we do on our own, like when we read the transcript, when we do our coding. Although there's a certain part in what we do wherein we share information, we share our memos, we go to our uh, team, collaborate in making sense of the things that we have processed individually. But there's still a huge amount of time that we spend on our own, in our mind, relating with the text that we have. And it takes a lot of integrity to be able to let the data, let the text speak for itself, or let it speak to us and us speak to it in that kind of certain relationship that no one really knows exactly what is going on in that kind of relationship, much like how we relate with other people. So it takes a lot of integrity. It also takes a lot of honesty in the things that we do, being able to be true to the text that we have, and be responsible also in uh, analyzing and interpreting, most especially. And that's where the role of reflexivity comes in, because we recognize the fact that as the researcher, there's also a lot of agency given to us in the research process, especially in qualitative research. And with that power to enact our agency also comes certain responsibilities that we have to uh, abide by, so that we are really doing things in the right and proper way, and in a way that is expected of us as researchers. So there's just a lot of words that comes to mind and a lot of images that comes to mind. I sometimes think, like in terms of images, I can imagine, the like one side of the conscience here talking to me, like, read it well, code it well, and another a side of the um of my conscience probably telling me, no, you have no time, you just have to read through it and just label it as you want or as you think fit. So that kind of struggle and dilemma comes in the analytic process. And even as Creswell would argue, even not just in the analytic process, but even in planning or across the research cycle. So there's just a lot of words and images that you can probably think of. And I I'm curious about what your thoughts are, but I am not there, so I don't have the opportunity to ask you. But later on, you can probably discuss among yourselves what comes to mind or what your responses are. Now, I'm usually enamored with etymology. So when I was preparing this presentation, I was thinking, where does the word ethics come from? And based on my research, basically uh, through Google, like I saw that the word ethics actually comes from the Greek word ethos, which means character. So it is a it is a part of who we are. I would say, as human beings, we all of us have a certain character that we possess and embody. And the collective the collection of these embodiments of characters that we have somehow links to our ethics. So our ethics is not apart from us. In my mind, our ethics is not apart from us. It's basically who we are, how we approach things. So, and I got more curious with the word character. Where does the term character come from? And again, in my research, it showed that it comes from the term charax, which is also Greek. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it well, but the idea of this particular term is that it is a term that refers to appointed state, which means that it is something that you put on the ground to determine the position, the location of something. So ethics, in a way, is the distinct or marked process on how we approach things in what we do. And that's why what I was saying, or that's what brought me to my insight, that ethics is actually how we do things. It's not apart from us. It is something that is unfolding within us, something that is within us that we externalize through our behaviors. Now, let's now talk about ethics in research. And I had this conversation before with one of my mentors in the past. And if you're like me, when I was starting in research, I usually fear the ethics review board. I had a certain fear about institutional review board because the idea is usually at least in some people's experience in my environment, in my learning environment, the IRB made their lives difficult because of certain asks and certain things that they have to change. But when I had this conversation with my mentor, what she told me was that sound ethics is a prerequisite to a sound methodology. And what she meant by that was that when we are being asked to be ethical in the research process, it is actually not apart from asking us to be sound in the methodologies that we use. Because when we consider the well-being of our participants, when we consider the the value of the information that are freely given to us and the way we relate with this information, the outcome of that is that we are also implementing or making our methodology more robust to pitfalls. So when we do things ethically, then we are also doing our science in a more rigorous, I would say, and sound manner. So there is a certain chapter in Creswell's book which speaks about ethics and qualitative research. There's a lot of things there which were discussed, but I would just like to focus on Creswell's citation of Weiss and Fine 2000, which talks about ethical considerations in qualitative research. So first is that we are called to consider our role as outsiders or insiders to the participants. And I think this is very important. When I was doing the requirement in this class, and the people that I'm interviewing are peers, so they're also from the Filipino community where I also live my life, so it's my everyday place in that environment. So I had a certain feeling and apprehension when I was starting, because hmm, what if I ask questions that would what if I ask questions that would trigger things that are that are sensitive, which also relates to the segment, sensitive in that environment. And I am not only a researcher to these people, I'm also a friend, I'm also a peer, I'm also a co-Filipino. So that reflection on our role as outsider or insider to the participants are important. Then, in terms of the sensitive issues and fear of disclosure, of course, as most of us are clinicians or have experience in counseling clients, and I think we are all equipped in handling this, but it's still good to think about sensitive issues and respect our participants, especially in determining areas of our research that they are comfortable disclosing or not disclosing about. Of course, as a researcher, we want to call out lived realities. We want to get as much information as we want to inform our research. But at the core of it is that unlike physical scientists, wherein they are dealing with objects, inanimate objects that are not prone to emotions and thoughts. We're actually dealing with human beings with histories of material, with a history, and with a treasure trove of materials that has been accumulated across time in the past. So when we talk to an interviewee or to an informant about a particular topic, you should be cognizant that there are tons of materials that may not be part of our research, but are actually existing within that person that we're dealing with. And um, one of the insights here that I had when I was doing our interview requirement for this class, was that I wanted to be aware and also be very in a way careful that as an interviewee, I will not leave the interviewees open, like after the interview. Especially in my case, I was talking about their idea about love and relationships, and I was interviewing couples of Filipino international students who are here studying here at Texas Tech. So that was my question. And since I talk about relationship, I should be cognizant that when I leave that system of that system comprised of myself and the interviewees, the interview actually doesn't stop there, because the participants may still continue with the conversation even if I'm not there anymore. So I have to be cognizant of that, the my potential impact among the participants. So the third is safe and supportive environment. So this is very self-explanatory. I think about beneficence, that the intent of the research process should be at the benefit or for the benefit of the participants. And as we aim for that benefits of the participants, we should not forget that we should not do any harm. So the do no harm principle, the principle of non-maleficence, should be there. So this is familiar to us as clinicians, and I think also very useful in the research process. The respect for the relationship and the valuing of participants' agency, the typical things that we do, like when we ask for informed consent, when we provide the participants the leeway to terminate participation in the interview, even anytime within the research process. And most importantly, acknowledging diverse voices and our location amid these resounding voices. So where are we positioned in that system of knowledge that involves us as the researcher and our other people, other human beings as our participants. So these are very, very interesting ideas that I got from the Creswell, that Creswell chapter, just by looking at this citation of Weiss and Fine. Now, another reading that we have is the reading about authorizing family science by Knapp. And I at first when I was reading it, I was thinking, where is ethics here? Like, is this reading really a reading to talk about research ethics? Then when I read it, I think it links to the acknowledgement of diversity and the voice and location of the researcher amid the learning system, or the system of research involving you, us as a researcher, and the participants, and even the discipline that we are in. So we are in that kind of system of knowledge production and research. So why do I say, or what are my thoughts that link this reading to the idea of research? Now, I know that you have read the article also, and there are a lot of beautiful things there. But essentially, what the article is emphasizing is the importance of how knowledge claims are created and presented in the field of family science. And with this being the crux of the paper, somehow it for me, it is a call for a responsibility among those people who are, generating knowledge or co-creating knowledge with the participants. And since we are the researchers and we are leading the research project in partnership with our participants, then we have that responsibility to 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 co-create knowledge and present those knowledge in ways that are not not open for misuse, or in a way that people will not misunderstand or misuse the information that we give. Because as researchers, although we I think all of us also agree that we do not want to have that you know how would I say this, some of us, myself included, is usually apprehensive to adhere to the expert model, wherein we get to say what we want to. I mean, we get to say what reality is. But in reality, when we write something, when we say something, and people hear us and they know that we are researchers in this field, people will believe us, and that makes us responsible for everything that we see and we write and we do in our field. So the article is also wonderful because it talks about critical reflection and including the self in the text, making clear our position, our location in the body of knowledge that we produce and co-produce. It also talks about the hindrance brought upon by objectifying practices in the production of high quality scientific knowledge claims. That us as a researcher, especially in the qualitative field where there is great leaning towards social constructivist views and approaches, sometimes there is apprehension in making claims because of the prevailing positivist, objectivist lens that the science in general has. But this article is actually comforting because it encourages us to actually respect the constructionist ways and say, for example, the constructionist writing practices, because it is in a way advocating for our field, is in a way improving the credibility that we have as researchers. So the bottom line really, or my key insight in this article, which somehow links to the idea about ethical issues in qualitative research, is that it is our ethical responsibility to the discipline that we are in and to the people we are working for and with to advocate for our disciplinal culture of knowledge production, and empower also through education, through conversations, those who are unfamiliar of our lens to take courage in seeing the world through our own spectacles. So that's why, like in just last night, there's a long Facebook conversations that my colleagues from the University of the Philippines has about authorship and collaboration. And I was telling them that in our field, I think the field really is gearing towards collaboration already, because it is our ethical responsibility to expand or to deal or approach our knowledge, to approach knowledge not only from a single lens, but from the lens of many people who also have expertise in that field. And that is the beauty of collaboration. And that is also where our ethical responsibility comes in, because we are, through our work, through our research, in a way, we do advocate for things, and we somehow have, because we know more, I suppose, we know more than we have somehow the responsibility to empower others who does not have the same level of knowledge as we have in our discipline. Now, the last chapter is on Creswell. I think it's chapter 10, focuses on standards of validation and evaluation. So in a nutshell, the chapter speaks about the value of validation and evaluation to answer to common questions that researchers ask when we publish our work. So I like here Creswell citing stake. Like, one of the questions that we ask is, did we get it right? We've had a lot of trainings, of course, in qualitative research or in other research approaches. But even amid all the trainings that we have and experience that we have, we cannot be like a monopoly. We don't have the monopoly of knowledge. So it means that the learning, the research process is a lifelong learning. It is a continuing learning. So at some point in the process, we get to ask, is what we did right? Is this something expected that others would expect to do? Is this how other people do it? So that's one of the valid question, I would say, that we researchers have. Then another question, Creswell cited Thomas. The question was, did we publish a wrong or inaccurate account? Or and my appreciation of this question is that, did we or have we been faithful to the accounts of the participants? So that kind of questions. So Creswell have made suggestions on how we can um, implement our research process within these expectations. I particularly like the figure 10.1, which emphasizes on strategies for validation. And the term validation here, as we use in this particular book, is nuanced, not exactly the same, somehow similar, I would say, but not exactly the same as we would define validity from a quantitative positivist lens. So uh, the strategies for validation here, I really appreciate this because it emphasizes the role of different lenses in looking at qualitative text. So there are certain validation strategies. There are focus on readers or taken from a reader's or a reviewer's lens, because especially in the field of science, it is not only the interviewee or the interviewer, which is part of the knowledge production system, but also the readers and the reviewers who would somehow gatekeep the knowledge we have produced or co-created. There are also certain strategies here which are focused on the researcher's lens, which of course is expected, because as the researchers, I would say we have ethical responsibility in making our knowledge product accurate and trustworthy. Then interesting also because there are some strategies here which involve the participants themselves, because like as we have been constantly mentioning in the past, participants are co-creators of knowledge, especially in the area of qualitative research and in the area of family sciences, or any area I would say which talks about human beings or which tries to make sense of the human experience. So this is a beautiful, simple but a beautiful conceptual framework which emphasizes that there are varying lenses looking at our knowledge product in qualitative research, and all these, the researcher, the reviewer, the participants, are all collaborating either directly or indirectly, actively or passively, in making sure that the accounts that we provide are accurate and are faithful to the data that we have. So I'm just going to brush through some of the interesting things here, like one of the strategies that we're all familiar with is corroborating evidence through triangulation. And I think uh, a further, like if you push it further, an extension of this might be to engage in mixed methods research. We're also involved other methodological approach in handling or in responding to our research questions. But even within the data itself, if in the qualitative data itself, we do some form of triangulation between and among cases. Of course, the peer review process is a strategy for validation, generating a rich or thick description that allows us to go beyond the way we relate with the data. We are able to present as much information and about what we experience in the research process through this rich and thick descriptions. And it also allows other people reading those descriptions to have the leeway to make sense of what we have gathered in the research process. There are also external audits. So the idea of audit trails, which has already been mentioned in previous sessions. So those are the things that are expected of the, or that are um, expected in the research process. Then some interesting things here, the discovering a negative case analysis or disconfirming evidence. So when I do interviews and I do have a question, usually I ask for participants about counter examples. So when say for example, when I ask them, so how do you address or how do you respond to this particular event in your life? And they of course they have their own experience. I usually get curious asking them, so what if another thing happened which is totally opposite of what you have experienced? How would you have responded to that? So that's one of my internal strategy. But of course there are other ways to do this, which involves getting more samples with diverse experiences. So there are just a lot of strategies involved in this process. Engaging in reflexivity, which Arisha has mentioned earlier. The idea of member checking or seeking participant feedback. So especially for working in a community setting, and we are and I would say, especially if you are doing things that would have an impact on other people's lives, it is always a good practice to seek not only their insights during the not only during the interview process, but even after the interview has occurred. So there are even approaches now wherein the people in the community are involved not only in the interview process, but even in writing the articles, even in making analysis of the data. So there's just a lot of ways through which we can involve our participants in the research process, which sometimes would involve prolonged engagement, meaning that it's not only a one-shot deal that I want to get the data, I go to the community, I talk to a family, get the data, and when I leave them, uh, I leave them with a lot of questions like, what are you going to do with the data? What happens next in a few months or in a couple of years? What happens to the data that I have provided you? So it also takes a lot of a prolonged sense of engagement and relationship, and of course, collaborating with participants in many ways. So there are a lot of good things also in this chapter, but I only, like, given the time that I have, I can only talk about this particular figure here. But the bottom line of these validation strategies for me, which ties it back to the question on ethic, is that all of these things will allow us to give justice, to stay faithful to the information that are freely given to us by our participants. And I think that the best thing I think that we can do with those informations given to us is to deal with them with utmost care, and not use them to skew reality by not being faithful to what the participants are saying. We have to listen and not just hear them in the research process. And to close this presentation, I want to emphasize again on the value of good ethics in the soundness of our research methodology. So Arisha has discussed earlier the value of reflexivity and all these things. These things are not away or apart from those discussions that she said or that she shared earlier. This is actually coming full circle to what Arisha shared earlier when she emphasized that we have to keep reflecting and thinking about our position in the research process. We do have a lot of power as the researcher, and therefore we also do have a lot of responsibility in the research process. And with this, I'd like to end this video. I hope to see you all next week.